to the show. It is unfortunately it's election night, and everybody needs a distraction tonight because I'm trying to avoid the what's happening. But helping distract me is Dirk Manning, who I met for the first time at New York Comic Con this year, and he just happens to be having a Kickstarter that he's running. So I thought it'd be great to have him talk about it. So first off, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for all you continue to do. Like you said, we got to finally kind of meet in person the first time at New York Comic Con. It was like a couple weeks ago, but it seems like it
I
was
know,
like
forever.
the vortex of New York. But no, thank you for all you continue to do for comic creators such as myself. Those of us that who run Kickstarters and things like that. Everything you guys you all do is very supportive and very appreciative, and happy to come on and talk comics and get away from everything else for a bit with you today. So
Yeah, well, I like when we started talking over Facebook before the show. It's like I knew of you and knew of your stuff, and but it's like always walking past, going, I really want to go talk to him, but I'm really not that I'm not cool enough to go talk to him. So, but
we we I hope by now you in one conversation have learned that's not the case. But it's funny, you do a roundabout way echo something I hear a lot at shows is New York, for example, is a monster show. 250,000 people are at the show and things like that, and I had this happen at C2E2, Grand Rapids Comic Con, Fantastic Con Toledo, but different shows that tend to be pretty busy, have a lot of people. People say, "Oh, well, I was going to come by and say hi, but you were, you had people at your table, you were busy," and I'm like, "That's just me chopping it up with my friends or readers or whatever. Just come by for a minute, or even if it's new people, sometimes it's just a matter of just kind of." I don't mean to say get in line, but just kind of like let it be known that you want to stop and say hi. We'll wrap up what we're doing, wrap up the transaction, go on our way, and we'll move on. So I'm glad you did. I'm glad we got to talk. And yeah, like I said, New York, but that's New York. New York is such a wild, crazy show. Especially, it's like I tell people who have not done New York Comic Con, you don't know what it's like, regardless of how many other conventions you've done, until you do it. It's just a whole different animal. Well, hello, Hope. Hello, Jennifer. Hello, friends.
Yeah. So before we get talking about the Kickstarter, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey as a comic book reader and as a creator.
Yeah, this February will be my 22nd year as a published comic book writer, which explains, like I tell people, explains these great temples. I'm sorry, reversed on the camera, but the great temples. Dirk Manning. I'm a comic book writer, primarily of creator-owned works, although I have dabbled in working with other established creators and things like that, as I'm sure we'll be talking about in a little bit. I think some of my more famous works are Nightmare World, Tales of Mystery, Homestead just came out, Hope, The Adventures of Cthulhu Jr. and Friends. A lot of people also know me as the writer of the column, the column from Newsarama back in the day, now turned book, Right or Wrong, A Writer's Guide to Creating Comics. It's a book I put together to help other creatives who are interested in writing move forward and start creating comics. And last couple of years, I've had some really neat opportunities to work with some other creative individuals to bring their graphic novels to life, including Tony Schiavone from All Elite Wrestling for Butts and Seats, the Tony Schiavone story. Arn Anderson, My Life as the Enforcer, Twisted, Haunted Highons, and did a comic book with the Harp Twins. And now most recently, and what I'm super just over the moon excited about is, again, although I primarily identify as someone that does creator-owned comics, I have been given the amazing opportunity to help shepherd the resurrection of London After Midnight, the Lon Chaney, 1927 Lon Chaney horror film that was lost in a fire in the 60s as an original graphic novel with Chaney Entertainment. And I tell people all the time, even if you don't know the name London After Midnight, You know that image, right?
Yep.
And yeah, we're getting to bring that the first vampire in American cinema, Lon Chaney, and so we're bringing that back as original graphic novel. It's on Kickstarter now at londonaftermidnightcomic.com, and just as a lifelong horror geek and comic geek for a great portion of my life and my career, to be able to bring this back, this lost classic back as a graphic novel, is just an honor. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. It's just really cool, and the team we've got to assemble on this book, it's pretty spectacular. We're funded. We've already unlocked the first stretch goal. We're moving towards the second, and people can check it out when we're done talking, of course, or before, at londonaftermidnightcomic.com.
So, what was your introduction to comic books? Do you remember maybe the first one you read, or maybe
Oh
that
yeah,
one that kind of made you, say, this is something I want to get into further?
yeah. I didn't discover comics seriously until I was a teenager. Like I said, I've always been more of a horror person, but I've also been a very, very avid lifelong reader. Um, I would go to the library and just take out books and just rip through them. I've always been an avid reader, and I discovered comic books when I was a teenager. And the allure to me initially was the fact that if I found something I liked, there'd be more of it every month. And that was the big thing for me. It's like, oh my gosh, if I find like a series I like, I'll get to read more and more every month. Actually, one of my first comics I ever read is actually right over here by my desk. I keep it with me. I jumped into Peter David's run on the Incredible Hulk, and I bought my first comic book that started really my journey into comics at a skateboard shop. I was a metal kid, but I was also a skater kid when I was a teenager, and went in there to get some work done on my new Steve Caballero skateboard. I'll date myself a little bit, and my brother had the Tony Hawk, right? So, but I was a Caballero guy. And I knew of the Hulk because of the old Lou Ferrigno TV show that I used to watch with my parents, when we were little. And I thought, well, I'll check this out. It's something. And if I like it, there'll be more of it. Um, and after that, I was pretty much off to the races. But what really then got me into comics after that, my first issue of a comic was Incredible Hulk as a teenager. But the books that really drew me in were in very short order after that. I was introduced to The Crow by James O'Barr, Watchmen by Warren Gibbons, and Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller.
I've heard about those. I've heard some things about those.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something where when that's your introduction to the medium, and in my book Right or Wrong, I talk about like what I drew from all three of those, but those are three heavy hitting comics, and it made me fall in love with the medium, right? Each of them in different ways. So James O'Barr basically bled on the page, and then the whole structural approach, the way Warren Gibbons approached the juxtaposition of the storytelling with the words and images and things like that, and then just really like the grit and the dynamicism of Dark Knight Returns, and just the power of it, and how you could take something that was so well known in Batman and then just turn it into this whole different thing. It was like, wow. As someone who's been a lifelong reader and arguably a writer most of my life, I think when I was I remember exactly where I was. I was 12 when I decided that I was going to be a writer, or when that gypsy curse finally kicked in and made me a writer. That I knew that this was a medium I wanted to write in and create in. And 2 decades later, plus, here I am.
Yeah. So let's get into London After Midnight. You've mentioned it a little bit, but what is the what is it about? I mean, I know that you probably what got you interested in the project was your love for horror, but kind of how did you get involved with the Lon Chaney people?
Yeah, yeah. I actually worked with Ron Chaney from Chaney Entertainment, and therein lies a tale. Um, this goes all the way back to me working on the book Twisted Haunted Highons with the rap band Twisted out of Detroit, and I was introduced to working with them through Gary Reed, who was the publisher of Caliber Comics back in the day, who published the original edition of Right or Wrong. Twisted's manager is a really great guy by the name of George Valakis, and we had a lot of success with Haunted. We've had a lot of success with Haunted Highons. We did 2 graphic novels, 2 miniseries, a spin-off one shot. Haunted Highons was nominated for 4 Ringo Awards: Best Humor Comic twice, Best Illustrator, Best Colorist. So we have a really good thing going with that. And George, who's Twisted's manager, Twisted's a rap rock band up out of Detroit. He said to me, "Hey, would you be interested in maybe talking to Ron Chaney of Chaney Entertainment from the legendary Chaney Family and Horror?" And he's like, we were talking about him maybe doing some comic book stuff with some of his screenplays. I'm like, yeah, we can have that conversation for sure. Which interestingly enough is how so many times in life I stumble into the jobs I do, which is we can have that conversation, right? And Ron was a really great guy, and we started talking about different options of things that we could do to bring some of his work to graphic novel form. And again, Ron is just a really fantastic human being, really cool dude. And then early in the conversation, in some of our early conversations, he happened to mention London After Midnight. Now, again, lifelong horror geek, me, like many of the people, I've been waiting for a version of this to resurface forever in film, right? Every once in a while, I hear some hoax or some rumor about, someone found a copy of London After Midnight. And to this day, people are like, someone has it in an attic somewhere. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But where I sit with it is, if Chaney Entertainment doesn't have a copy of it, and so originally we were talking about some other stuff, and then when he mentioned London After Midnight, I told him, I said, Ron, we have an opportunity to bring this story back, right? We can introduce it. This is a story that people have wanted to know forever, and that's what started the conversation. Right, and it's been a really neat process. A lot of people know the image, but don't really know the story of London After Midnight. And I don't want to give too much of it away because a lot of it involves kind of like a murder mystery and a thriller and things like that. And then obviously the iconic the Man in the Beaver Hat, the vampire. But there's like a murder mystery aspect to it. There's a supernatural aspect to it. And I was provided with the with a screenplay, remastered version of the screenplay by Ron Chaney, and then we turned and adapted that to original graphic novel. I got to bring in Joshua Ross, who is one of my longest collaborators in comics. Really, really good dude. Colin Johnson, who I just worked with on Homestead and then Love Stories About Death, is the colorist. Dave Lentz, who does it's hard to read an independent creator-owned comic without Dave Lentz being involved in the lettering right now. He's just a beast. He's a machine. And he's one of the best lettering and design guys in the industry. Our editor, Drina Joe, who edited Haunted Highons for me and has done a bunch of other editing work for me and things like Hope and stuff like that as well. And I really got to bring a dream team together. And we involve Ron and Chaney Entertainment every step of the way. When I will tell you, when I held the screenplay in my hand, it was like I like quivered, like, oh my God, like this is it, Dirk. We're bringing it back. We're doing it, And then I adapted it section by section. I would show it to Ron. He would make notes and approve it. Then we give it to Joshua Ross, and he illustrates it and things like that. And here we are. Now we're on Kickstarter. We're fully funded. We're unlocking stretch goals. And we're bringing the book back as a limited edition, leather-bound, hardcover edition of the book. So the only way to get the leather-bound hardcover version of London After Midnight will be through this Kickstarter campaign. So I'm just super excited about that. This is one of those projects when the deal got finalized, I called my folks and I said, hey, if I die tomorrow, I want you to know today that I am working with Cheney Entertainment and the Lon Chaney estate. And the last time I did that when it was like years prior when I actually had the opportunity, and I was working with Stan Lee on something before he passed. And it was like that same thing. It was like, Mom, Dad, I just want you to know that I have a signed contract with Stan Lee's people right now. And we're working on a book, and then obviously things with Stan went very
Yeah.
unfortunately towards the end of his life, and that didn't materialize the way we wanted it to. But this is happening. London Every Midnight is happening. We're getting to bring back this horror classic, and I just can't wait for everybody to see it. I'm just so excited. And the Kickstarter exclusive leather-bound hardcover, that's going to be the only way to get it, right? If people later on order this in stores and things like that, they'll get a trade paperback, which is awesome too, don't get me wrong. But through the Kickstarter, you can get the hardcover, you can get the shirt, you can get commemorative coin. We do like a Give Me Everything pledge level. I'm really excited about it. I'm honored, and I don't use that word lightly, but I'm genuinely honored to be in this position to be doing this.
Well, you're answering the questions as I pop them up. So
Sorry.
that's fine. So you know, you've done Kickstarters before. How is this one kind of different, the same, or how has you know how has that platform been for you? As a indie creator, overall.
Yeah, I've raised in pre-sales over $500,000 on Kickstarter, which is small compared to some people, but to me, I consider that pretty amazing, quite frankly, because I don't do things that sometimes would be an easy layup in terms of Kickstarter. It's like, hey, there's certain ways you can make a lot of money on Kickstarter very quickly, right? If you offer certain types of books and things like that. And again, there's no shame in that game at all. What I do is I specifically, and I'd like to think I was one of the OGs with crowdfunding with Kickstarter, is we offer limited edition hardcover versions of the graphic novels. So it's kind of like the first of the first print, right? These limited edition hardcovers. This is the only way to get the limited edition hardcover is through the Kickstarter campaign. And every campaign's different. I originally wanted to put out London Every Minute a lot sooner. I was originally working with a different artist who I've worked with before on the book, and things like that didn't materialize. We had to kind of reshuffle the whole deck on it. But I tend to, like right now, I am scheduling out my book release schedule till the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. That requires a lot of things going just right to get there, even when you work in possible delays. But this campaign has been really neat because I think one of the things we're doing is we're reaching a lot of people who maybe haven't used Kickstarter before. I can tell you at New York Comic Con, and you were there, you saw, we had this was the Ash Can comic that we had at New York Comic Con. I had this on the table, right, sitting there, without a glare, and people would stop in their tracks. I'm like, that's Lon Chaney, that's Lon Every Midnight, and I would talk to them about the book and things like that, and they would sign up to get notified about the Kickstarter. But a lot of people didn't know much about Kickstarter, 2 campaigns ago, we actually just this week we've been fulfilling orders on Homestead, which was a Native American werewolf Western book. I did a standalone book, real easy pitch, beautiful art by Les Garner. That's a very different animal than, say, the one I did between Homestead and this. At the printer, going to the printer right now, or at the printer right now, is Love Stories About Death, which is a reprint of an anthology I did for a year that's been out of print for years. And I did like a remastered version of that. We did like a red leather bound cover and things like that. So every campaign you do different stuff, and every campaign appeals to a different audience. And one of the things that's been really unique about this campaign, and I've been trying to kind of tell everybody very carefully, is the fact that London After Midnight merch is very hard to get your hands on after the fact,
Mhm.
right? Like, example, and I'm not a huge toy. I mean, I love collecting Funko Pops and stuff like that. I'm like, every time I think you can see a bunch behind me, every time I think I'm out, they make another one that I want. I'm like, they made Rod Sterling for the Twilight Zone? Dang it! Ugh. It's only $10. Next thing you know, I have to buy little stands for them. But given that I'm working on the London After Midnight comic, I thought I should really get that NECA figure. Right?
Mhm.
Deluxe NECA figure. Bro, listen, I had to fight so hard to find one of these things. And I'm working on the book, right? And I'm seeing
Mhm.
what the old London After Midnight figures go for and stuff. And I'm like, good gravy. So I've been telling people with this campaign, this is a little bit different than a lot of my creator-owned stuff. If you want to get a hardcover of Tales of Mystery Volume 1, which was my first Kickstarter book I did, good luck. Good luck.
Mhm.
You know, we're Austin McKinley's illustrating Tales of Mystery Volume 6 right now for next year, right? So it's been a while. If you want to get the Nightmare World Bible, which was the slipcased, leather-bound hardcover omnibus of Nightmare World, good luck, right? They're long gone. The demand for those books, while strong among some populations, is going to pale in comparison to the people that may not find out till after the campaign is done that there's a leather-bound hardcover edition of the London After Midnight graphic novel. And that's one of the things I'm trying to tell people now. It's like, look, tell everybody about this graphic novel. Tell them that this is the chance to get the leather-bound hardcover, because I guarantee you, Chad, on everything, for months after this campaign ends, people go, you get more of those hardcovers? No, because we make them
Yeah.
print to order. We make a few extra for damages, and that's it.
Yeah.
You can get the trade paperback, and it's going to be just as amazing, but it won't be that limited edition collector's edition. So that's kind of like the backlash that Cheney Entertainment and I are already preparing for, is it's like,
Mhm.
there's going to be people that find out about this book later and want it, and they're not going to get that version. You know, so with this one, it's really just about telling people, hey, make sure you're making sure they know this version exists, because
Mhm.
you know, horror people, we're collectors, right?
Yeah.
We love that stuff. The steelbook Blu-rays, you know, sometimes multiple versions of the same movie or the same, you know, thing. So uh, that's, I think, what's really unique about this campaign is the fact that I know there's people out there that are going to, because honestly, a lot of media doesn't like covering Kickstarters. You know, I think it's hard for. There's not a lot of good comic press out there right now, which is why I'm so grateful for organizations like Comic Watch, who you. And I'm not pandering. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're out there and you do this work, but it's especially hard for creator-owned work or work that's not being backed by mega corporations. And on top of that, in a lot of media, there's this perception that when you're running a Kickstarter, you're out there shaking a tin can for nickels.
Mhm.
That's not it. We've raised, you know, over $11,000. You know, we did over $10,000 in 4 days. We're funded. We're good. I'm not out there begging people for money. I'm saying, if you want the limited edition, leather-bound hardcover edition of this book with any other stretch goals that we unlock, reserve it now. This is your chance to get it. So with a mainstream property like this, I think that's the other thing that we're kind of looking at, is it's like letting people know, yeah, we are releasing this on Kickstarter because this is a direct way to get the limited edition hardcover to people. Might Barnes and Nobles want 1,000 leather-bound hardcovers? Maybe, but we're offering it to the people on Kickstarter,
Mhm.
and that's the way you're going to get it. And that was even a conversation we had to have about, if we do this deluxe version, we're going to keep it Kickstarter exclusive. We're going to have a really nice 150 plus ish page graphic novel, soft cover in stores. but the real ones will find it. The real ones will know.
Mhm.
Find it on Kickstarter, bag it this way, and then you get the deluxe version. But that's been what's been different about this campaign is I'm not just catering to people that are familiar with my work and know my work as much as we are now with this legendary property.
So when you were working on adapting the screenplay to the
Mm-hmm.
comic book, were there any challenges that you faced, or um, how did that how did you know was that something that you're is this your first time doing something like that?
It was, yeah, it was, a big part of it, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, was just the weight and the legacy behind what I was doing,
Hmm.
right? That was a big part of it. And then really wanting to honor exactly what this is and like almost try to take it as much as I can, word for word, from the screenplay, the remastered screenplay. Because remember, the original was a silent film, 1927. So taking this remastered screenplay with dialogue inserted and stuff like that, or more clearly spelled out, to the comic page, because comics and movies obviously are two very different mediums. And in full disclosure, and I'll tell you this just very openly, the ending of London After Midnight, the original version of the film, and like people like even like I think it was like Ray Bradbury talked about how he saw it back in the day, and it's like the ending, especially with being a silent film, gets pretty involved and pretty complex. And without giving too much away, I will say that I had to step back from the screenplay when I read it, and I'm like, why was it done this way? Because there's a lot going on at the end here. And then I'm like, my goodness, how am I going to translate this to a comic book? Because there's a lot of literally moving parts
Hmm.
in the final act. A lot of like move, like literally like stage direction moving. And once I realized why they told the story the way they did, and a lot of it's just because this was a Lon Chaney special effects makeup vehicle, I was able to step back and say, okay, I get what they're doing, but now how do I demonstrate what would have been this like amazing makeup special effects work for all this stuff towards the end of the movie to a comic book that doesn't move? And rather than seeing a live actor, we're looking at drawings of people on a page. So then you got to do all that, and you kind of, for like a better, streamline this in while still keeping all the beats. But then you're doing this knowing you're working with one of the most legendary and iconic lost films of all time. And then I got to turn around and give it to Chain Entertainment, give it to Ron and say, and I'm very thankful, very grateful. Ron read what we did, which again, for the record, is very, very, very faithful to the original story. But I had to tell the story differently because it's not a bunch of actors moving around on a stage, right? Now it's like we're on a comic book and we're in this scene and we have to kind of do this in a way that translates to still images. And I gave it to Ron and I was like, okay, putting in the bag, like, okay, here we go, here we go. And he really liked it. He goes, that's when you call your folks again. I called my folks and said, I finished London After Midnight. They still liked it, but you had the reaction I did. It was like that black spinning wheel for a second, like, oh God, what's happening? So it was a very unique challenge. Um, but the sheer honor of what I was doing, and again, I do not use that word flippantly. It was an honor to be able to do this. The honor to be able to create, to take that screenplay and adapt it into a graphic novel made the stress of it worth it. And I'm really happy with the result. We've really honored the story. We've told the story the way it was told, and we've also told it in a way that honors the medium of comics, kind of coming full circle what we said earlier, right? I love this medium. Harvey Picard said comics are words and pictures, and you can do anything with words and pictures. I wanted to make sure this didn't read like I want to make sure it didn't read like a screenplay turned into a comic,
Hmm.
right? I wanted to make sure it read
Right.
like a comic book that just happened to be based on a movie that was originally a screenplay. And that
Right.
was
And kind of the reason why, sorry to interrupt, but the reason why I ask is because, I'm, I'm a big Star Wars person, so I'll,
Hmm,
read like the um adaptions of the Disney Plus shows, and
right,
when if I'm reviewing them, I'll watch the episode and kind of compare it to the you know just to see watch see how the shots are in the show and see what's shots that they pick out and how they decide to interpret that onto the page.
right, right. Well, and that's exactly it, right? It's like I love comic books. I love the comic book medium. I love graphic novels. I've dedicated over 2 decades to creating comic books. I'm filling a spinner rack with all my own work. And I wanted to make sure that this read like a comic, not read like a graphic novel or a comic book or graphic novel, however you want to look at it, but also read like a Dirk Manning comic book or graphic novel, and read in a way that people that are familiar with my creator-owned work are going to read this and say, okay, yeah, this still holds that level of quality, or I guess that level of quality, depending on where you right. But then conversely, people that have never read a comic book reading this one, maybe for the first time or for the first time in years, they've read a graphic novel and appreciating and understanding it. Which is why I'm also really honored and excited to be working with Joshua Ross on this. Joshua Ross is an amazing visual storyteller. I've worked with him for most of my career, and to be able and he just did a book called Left Turns. I got a public his he wrote and illustrated his first graphic novel after we've worked together for decades. And this guy turns around and gets a Publisher Weekly's review on his first book he did all his own. I'm like, you son of a gun. you know? But he's a masterful visual storyteller,
Hmm.
right? So, and he has a very clean style, and knowing to be able to bring him in and do this and work with it. Um, yeah, it's I'm carrying a lot of weight with this one, honestly. Chad, is what it comes down to, right? I'm carrying the legacy of the property. I'm carrying the idea that there's going to be a lot of people's first graphic novel. I'm carrying the fact that this is me adapting someone else's story to a graphic novel. There was a lot that went into this, but I'm really happy with the end result. And I hate to say that, even though I'm the one that did it, but it's true. I mean, it's true. I'm really happy with how this has turned out.
Well, how was you said you've worked with, I can't, sorry, the artist. Was there
Joshua Ross.
communication? Josh, yeah. So was there how was the eh, taking taking his your writing and him translating it onto the page must have been simple since you guys have worked together before, but again, trying to what, like you've been saying, honor the material and all that. Um, was that
Yeah, it's interesting because Joshua and I have worked together a very long time. He's the most prolific artist on Nightmare World, which is the first series I ever wrote. He did more stories in Nightmare World than anyone. He's the guy with whom I launched Tales of Mystery. He worked with me on Butts and Seats. We've done stuff together for years and years and years and years. And again, he was not the original artist I was going to work with on this project, not because he's not amazing, but because he also runs his own tattoo studio.
mhm,
And I knew this was a big undertaking. And quite frankly, Josh and I at that point were working on a graphic novel that's going to be announced in January with another major force in horror. So I pulled Joshua back into the fold after he did his own book, Left Turns, which you can get on Amazon and Kindle. That's, again, slice of life of an artist book. It's amazing. At a Publisher's Weekly review. So he went from doing stuff with me, really focusing on his tattoo studio, doing his own graphic novel. I pull him back into the fold to do a horror graphic novel. just as he's wrapping that up, I'm like, hey, I'm doing this thing with Cheney Entertainment, and I think you'd be good to come in and do this. But on this property specifically, on London After Midnight, I told him, I said, this is going to be a very different style of storytelling than you normally see from me. I said, it's still going to read like a Dirk Manning thing when all said and done. But yeah, but I have to very faithfully adapt this other version. So it was interesting because we would talk a lot about it. He's like, yeah, this is kind of different than what you normally do, and especially different than the last thing I just did with you that I can't talk about yet. So it's ironic that he finished a graphic novel with another horror personality. We can't even announce till January, but then we're turning on doing this one first. Like I said, that scheduling thing. So it was different. It did present some unique challenges in how we worked together on this one. But because of the fact that we've worked together so much, I was able to readapt this to his style specifically and some of the nuances in storytelling that he does.
Nice.
Which is really in the weeds talk, and I got to be careful because you get me in the weeds on creating comic books, and I'll just talk about that stuff all night. So
We'll do that for the return show when you
they're
can
right, exactly.
about the so but so how do you feel that you as a writer that you've grown since your first published work to doing London After Midnight?
Yeah, you know, a big turning point for me, and I think it was a turning point for a lot of people, a lot of creatives, was 2020. You know, COVID happened, a lot of other things happened.
We lost
And
2 years and
yeah, that too, right. A lot of us lost years, and we lost people we cared about, and it caused everyone to have to stop. There was no more conventions for a while. Everything was grinding to a halt. And I lost my grandfather, who I was very close with around that time. And a lot of personal and professional relationships went sideways. A lot of things happened. But it allowed me to step back and really recenter. And and I say that for this reason. Up until 2020, which would have been about 15, 16 years in my career, whatever it was, 18 years in my career, it was always, I never took any time to stop and appreciate what I was doing. It was the next thing. It was thinking, we got Nightmare World out. Okay, then we did Tales of Mystery, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this, and we did this. And for me, it was always the ever-moving goalpost. We did Butts and Seats, the Tony Schiavone story. It was the first ever original graphic novel advertised on cable television. That's an amazing accomplishment. I wasn't stopping to enjoy it. I was worried about what was next. And that was even a little bit after 2020. But 2020 is when it really started to start for me. I realized I need to start stepping back and appreciating more what I was doing. And then move on to the next thing. And also earlier in my career, I was very focused on making sure that people knew that I was a horror comic writer. And I still am. I'm a horror guy through and through. I am a horror person. But after I put out 4 volumes of Nightmare World, 4 volumes of Tales of Mystery, then we can do like a all ages book about Cthulhu. Right? Then you can do the book about a woman who moonlights as a superhero. And people say, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're doing a superhero book? I'm like, no, I'm doing a book about a superhero. They go, oh, you're selling out? And I said, no. This is the scariest book I've ever done. But at that point, I had built up enough credit amongst my readers, enough money in the bank, if you will, use a wrestling term, that I could slowly start to push the envelope and show some of this other stuff I was doing, as opposed to horror anthology, horror noir, horror anthology, and I'm to a point now with whether you read the wrestling books, if you read Twisted Haunted Highons, if you read Hope, if you read Cthulhu Jr., if you read Homestead, everything still reads like a Dirk Manning book. You read Love Stories About Death. It's very Dirk Manning. But I'm able to start to push the, I don't say push the boundaries, but maybe stretch the boundaries of what I want to do and get out of my own way a little bit.
You're
You know?
growing as a writer and exploring different, kind of the same vein, but you're taking it in a different direction.
Yeah, and the thing is, these are stories I've always wanted to tell. Homestead, in the Native American Werewolf Western book, that was one of the earliest stories in my career I ever wanted to do. But I wasn't in a place where I could do it justice, and I didn't have the right team in place. So now what I can do is, I guess I can operate with a little more confidence in who I am as a writer, but also I can operate more confidence of who I am as a person. And it may sound very meta, but I think what it really comes down to is, for a long time, I was so much on that grind and so much on that hustle. I was only worried about establishing the brand of what I did
Mm-hmm.
through the work. I have over 20 graphic novels out. I don't write for Marvel. I don't write for DC. As a pretty much independent publisher, although I work with Source Point Press, I still largely am a one-man show, or that's not accurate. I am the project manager as one person on many of my projects that I then bring to publishers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very hard, Chad. It's very taxing, and it really got to a point where 2020, I had to kind of step back, like we all did, and then take time to refocus and recenter and be like, man, look, you're doing it. Enjoy it. Breathe a little, and then start thinking about, you've been doing this almost 20 years. If you only have another, let's say, 10 years left, 30 years in a career, what do you want to get done? I want to do the book about a woman who moonlights as a superhero. I want to do this all ages horror book. I want to do the werewolf Western book. Yeah, I'm going to work with Twisted and do a supernatural comedy book. And that opens up now working with Chain Entertainment, and getting to usher back in London After Midnight. So I guess I've changed as a writer is I don't feel like I have as much to prove. I can't even say that's true, because you always have something to prove. You're only as good as your last book or your last two if you're lucky. I guess maybe I don't have as much to prove to myself in regards to, I can be more confident in truly telling the stories I want to tell with the people I want to work with. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have people that support my work and back my work and enjoy my work. And it just allows me to operate with a little more. It's not easy. I can't say it's easier, but allows me to operate with a little more confidence.
I understand.
Again, I still sell Nightmare World on my table to this day. That book's 20 years old. I've never done a show where I haven't sold a copy of Nightmare World, a convention ever. And I sometimes do like 20 of those conventions a year.
Mm.
So I'm still extremely confident about Nightmare World. It's like one of my first books and I hide it. No, that's my first book, man. I'll put that book out against anything to this day, right now.
Yeah.
But now at this point in my career, the Great Temples, closer to the end of my career than the beginning, it's like, and I feel like a lot of musicians go through this, like, I'm going to do the stuff I want to do, not the stuff I feel I have to do.
Right.
That was a very long road to get to that statement, but I'm gonna put the pin in that and leave it right there. That's how it is. Good, great question. Sorry for the rambling answer.
No, that's fine. And so, um, as a horror fan, what are your top five, horror films, or anything in the horror genre that either, are your favorites or your biggest influences or
My biggest influence, probably of all time, is the Twilight Zone,
Hmm.
which I know a lot of people say is more speculative fiction and things like that. But
I think I agree. A lot of it is horror. I mean,
yeah, Terror
and
Twenty
it's
Thousand Feet, The Howling Man. I mean, you name it. I mean, the monsters doing Maple Street. Yeah, because so many Twilight Zones were two people in one room,
Mhm.
you know, and Rod Sterling, the master storyteller, and I used to watch the Twilight Zone with my great grandma, you know, and the moral the moral explorations and things that was a huge influence on me. Horror films, Let the Right One In. I sound like such a snob because some of my favorite horror films are from other countries, but Let the Right One In is a movie that lives in my head rent free forever. I just rewatched the other night Train to Busan, which is a Korean zombie flick. The high concept being, if Let the Right One In, the high concept is a 12-year-old boy and his vampire friend, who's also 12. The high concept of Train to Busan is zombies on a train, but it's just incredible, and it's moving and it's powerful. I really liked what Frank Darabont did with The Mist, the Stephen King short story. I think he did an
Mhm.
amazing job adapting that. Um, I really liked Heredity. Um, Ari Aster's doing such cool stuff right now. I just mangled his name. Sorry, it's late. um, and then in comics, I love the stuff that Eric Powell does with the Goon.
Mhm.
It's funny, it's poignant, it's heartfelt, it's beautiful. A huge Mike Mignola guy. I love what Mike Mignola did in the Hellboy universe is incredible. BPRD, I don't think gets nearly enough love as being a book that's just as good, possibly in some ways better than Hellboy. Yeah, I
Mhm.
said it. I love BPRD. Um, I like his stuff a lot. Garth Ennis has done some really cool stuff in the horror realm, um, or horror adjacent. I say this, and then when I get done talking, and then when I come up with like 10 more things, like, oh, I didn't mention this, oh, I didn't mention that.
Save
But
it
but
for
to
next
me,
time.
yeah, right. I'll have to come back. I'm like, shit, I need to come back out. I didn't talk about these. Um, but to me, a good horror story ultimately answers the question, what would you do if?
Hmm.
Right? And we I'm not afraid of being a 12-year-old boy and meeting a 12-year-old girl who's a vampire. I'm not afraid of zombies on a train. You know, what I'm afraid of is going back to the Twilight Zone example. What happens when the world you live in shifts a little,
Hmm.
twists a little, and suddenly things are not the world that you thought you lived in is not the world you live in, and how do you react? And what does it say about the people around you?
Yeah. No, I
That's
mean,
that's
you
the question of
mentioned
horror answers.
like the thing I like about the Twilight Zone is even I can put it on for background noise, and even if it's something I've had playing before, it's still interesting. Like, I mean, sure, yeah, I feel like sometimes I live with some of the people from the, it happened on Maple Street or
Right.
whatever.
The monsters do a Maple Street. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
That's a perfect example, though, right?
yeah,
It's such an allegory for especially these divided times, Or one of my favorite episodes of Twilight Zone, and I don't hear this one come up as much in the top 10, but to me it's a top 5 easily, is the Howling Man. And the Howling Man is when there's guy's car breakdown or whatever, and he goes to this like monastery out in the middle of nowhere. He's this castle or whatever it is. It's a monastery, and these monks live there. And they, hey, my
oh, is
car
that the
broke
one where
down.
they like have the devil
The guy,
trapped
yeah,
up?
yeah, this guy's in the
Yeah,
basement, exactly. And he hears this guy yelling and howling. And the guy whose car broke down was like, there's a guy, I hear a guy screaming, and the monk's like, oh, ignore him. That's the devil.
yes,
He's like, what? He's like, oh yeah, we're an ancient order, and we've been charged with keeping the devil captive. The guy's like, I'm not the devil. I'm not the devil. Please help me. They trapped me. What do?
yeah,
Do you get involved in this, or do you just like, I want to fix my car and go, and maybe I'll call the
yeah,
cops later, But this guy's like, help me. I love stuff. Good horror explores those topics and answers those questions, right?
yeah,
Um, to me, that's what I love about the genre, and even more again with London After Midnight, it's a large part of it's like a murder mystery type of thing. There's a thriller aspect to it, but it answers those questions like, what would you do if?
mm,
And that's what I love about horror, and for me, I think The Goon answers that question. I think Hellboy answers that question. I think all your great horror stories answer those questions. Like, what would you do if this was the situation you were in? Again, the vampire doesn't scare me. How people would react to a vampire being around,
yeah.
there's your story. There's your story, my friend.
So I know we're getting close to an hour, and I know we probably both have stuff we have to do in the morning and all that. So,
And tonight, right?
and tonight, well,
Hey, being a
I,
writer is like having homework every day for the rest of your life. So I got my post-it notes here, like stuff like to get done. So no, absolutely.
I,
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm just also thinking that I could, uh, if I really felt like it, I could probably write a couple more reviews for tomorrow. But I don't know.
Same
Don't know if
thing,
I'm
right? Right? Yeah.
don't know if I'm in the headspace or when if I just want to go and crash in bed. But as we wrap up here, kind of give us one final pitch for the campaign
Hmm.
and where people can find out more about you and your work.
Yeah. Again, the campaign is londonaftermidnightcomic.com. Make sure you have the comic on there, londonaftermidnightcomic.com. This is the only way to get the Kickstarter exclusive leather-bound hardcover edition of London After Midnight. This is going to be an instant collectible piece of horror history. Amazing art team on it. Middling writer that's adapting it. Really cool book. We've already unlocked the first stretch goal. You're going to get a Kickstarter exclusive book plate with your hardcover signed by me. We have a gimme everything level on this campaign where you get the hardcover, you get a trade paperback edition, you get the digital edition, you get the T-shirt, and you get a collector's coin for $100 for U.S. shipping.
Wow.
It's insane. I've never done such an economical gimme everything in my whole life. It's wild. It's a real cool pledge level. But again, check it out. You can get the T-shirt and the book. You can get just hardcover. You can do whatever you want to do. LondonAfterMidnightComic.com. Learn more about me and my work. You can go to dirkmanning.com. I'm on most social media at Dirk Manning. Just look for the avatar of the guy with the top hat and the scarf. That's me.
Yes.
Not to be confused with this guy in the top hat and stuff like that, but no coincidences. It's always been an homage to this.
Yeah.
So how cool is that? But yeah, Facebook, Instagram, trying to up my Instagram game. At Dirk Manning or dirkmanning.com. You can sign up for my monthly newsletter there as well and keep you in the loop of shows I'm doing, books coming out, and things of that nature.
I did.
Yes, sir.
Well, like I want to thank you for taking the time this evening and providing a much needed distraction and yeah, best of well, not that you need luck for the campaign, but continued success as you wrap up. How many more days do you have?
26 days. We end on Cyber Monday, so December 2nd will be the last day of the
Oh
campaign.
wow,
It's going to be here
wow!
before we know it, friend.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, right.
Got so much to do between now and the end of the year. So,
Yes, sir.
but,
But no, but
but
thank you, and hey, I'll take all the luck, I'll take all the support, all the well wishes, and thank you to those of you that have been watching the campaign or watching this live stream that have been supporting the campaign. Jump in, LondonAfterMidnightComic.com, and again, Chad, thank you with a Comic Watch, everything you do for those of us that are creating comics. You the what you provide is very necessary and very appreciated. And thank you to all of you that spend some time with us tonight, even if it's just as a
yeah,
distraction. Thanks for
yeah.
hanging out for a bit.
So you can find Dirk's project and other great projects on our weekly post, the Crowdfunding Corner, which runs every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know somebody that has a campaign that they need a little extra, you know, boost on the signal, then let us know, and we'll we'll definitely have to talk again once you can talk about your other projects. And
I look forward to it. Thank you.
all right, and I promise I won't be uh, intimidated to stop by when I see you in New York.
I look forward to it, my friend. Thank you
It,
so much.
it,
Thank you very much for
it, it, it's all me and all my social hangups.
watching. Man, look, when we're at Comic Con, we're amongst our own people,
I
right?
know.
So we're all good. Thank you,
All
sir.
right,
Thank you for watching, and we'll talk soon.
all right, sounds good.
Thanks, buddy.